Well, a very warm welcome to this session, and it's my pleasure to introduce to you Michael Sussman, who is the Chief Product Officer of BAV. Mike, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure, David. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's always nice to introduce somebody who is probably the most knowledgeable person on the planet about how to understand your customers and consumers better and what the trends in the marketplace are going to be now, but that's interesting, but probably much more important what they're going to be in the future. Now, Mike, over the course of last week's broadcasting and even this morning, probably most of our contributors, our experts, our analysts have talked about the importance of really getting to know and understand your customer and how at shopping festivals like the Alibaba's 11/11 Global Shopping Festival, having that knowledge pays dividends in ensuring that you can be as impactful and effective as possible, not just in terms of unit sales, but also to be able to inspire the right customers with the right propositions and the right products. My BAV is an extraordinary resource. It's something that is only available to WPP agencies across the globe, driven by WPP, and it is a treasure trove of insight, and you're going to help people understand how to unpack that insight to ensure that at global shopping festivals, key sales periods around the world, around the year, you can be as impactful as you possibly can be. So, Michael, over to you.
Thank you. Again, Michael Sussman, I head up the BAV product. I've been working with BAV for 25 of its 29 years or so in existence, and it's a treasure of data, as David said, and there's amazing things you can do with it. And if you think about using data, our data is consumers rating brands, so it's brand data. And while it's about the brand, you can derive a lot of what's important to them by looking at the types of brands consumers use and why they use them and what do they stand for. So we talk about return on financials and return on brand and the investment because it's a bit intangible. And what I like to look at are the things that are creating loyalty and advocacy and pricing power for a brand. And then if we understand those things, those are the things that trickle down and drive, stock price and quarterly reports, because if you have greater loyalty and greater pricing power, you don't have to discount and you can. So we look for derived importance of these things, which brands are strong and why. And that gives you some insights into the motivations of the consumer rather than saying what's important to you in a brand. And they say purposeful. Is it really? Let's just see if you're more likely to buy purposeful brands. That tells me it's important to you. So with that, quickly about the methodology, but then I'll talk about some examples of how you can dig into any good data, particularly BAV data, to mine and understand the motivations of customers today. I have at my access, billions of data points of data, which is quite amazing, looking over 28 to 29 years of brand equity and consumer motivations across 70 plus metrics. So that's a powerful thing to look at the movement of equity, the movement of brands and how they perform in the marketplace financially. And it really helps you understand those dependent variables. Lots of great academic partners that have helped us be really smart about how we use this data and to validate it. We want to make sure we're measuring the right things. Right now, one of my partners is Wharton School of Business, and we're doing a lot of work around best countries and measuring country brands. We'll talk a little bit about that with China. What does made in China mean today? BAV is special, and I'll quickly get through this because it's when you think about a brand, your typical research looks at a brand like Tesla, they'll look at it versus Ford or BMW, looks against category. BAV is category agnostic, so I can look at Tesla versus innovative brands or iconic brands, and it changes the dynamic. And what I mean is it changes how you think about brands. So if I ask somebody to rate some bank brands in the U.S., Chase, Capital One, Wells Fargo on innovation or on traditional or whatever, in this case, innovation, you look at that data and say, wow, Chase and Capital One are really innovative, right? If you had a lot of people saying that. But if you measure it this way, where you're looking at Capital One versus Tesla and versus Delta Airlines and Starbucks, all of a sudden your way of thinking about brands changes and you're thinking in a broader spectrum, which is what BAV does, and you start to see those broader cultural motivations. So while Capital One might look really innovative, is it really innovative compared to innovation and culture today? So it's a way of thinking about data. Then I could start to look at what are the most powerful brands in culture. For instance, Netflix on some metric, or weak brands and where are they challenged and why, and getting into the whys. Because I can look at brands from people to disruptors to icons to leaders to countries as brands. And so it's a lot of flexibility to understand, kind of constructs, because I can create my own constructs, brands that make me happy, the most trusted brands and so on, and find insights there. You always have to have some fundamental metrics to really help you understand importance. So we look at 4 key pillars of brand equity, and these have been proven to relate, highly to financial performance in the marketplace. Brand differentiation, what makes your brand special? Brand relevance, how appropriate is that to me? You could be very different, but if you're not appropriate, you don't fit into my life, I don't care. So differentiation plus relevance, that's brand strength, that's momentum, that's energy, that's future growth value. We also look at esteem and knowledge. How respected is your brand? Did it deliver on its promise? Will I use it again? Knowledge, how much of an understanding do I have of your brand? And sometimes high knowledge is a bad thing, because if I know you and I don't like you, knowledge is greater than esteem, you need to disrupt a bit. Anyway, these are the building blocks that I can look at. How do consumer behaviors and attitudes reflect strong brand equity? In this case, these pillars, which I know are already proven to drive financial performance. So here are some brands and where they sit in the U.S. today. Gap, in China today. Gap has become a fatigued and unfocused brand. In the U.S., it's fatigued. In China, it's actually unfocused. North Face is a momentum niche brand in the Chinese market. WhatsApp is a dominant player in the market, as we all know. And then Nissan's become a bit fatigued, right? So look at that pattern. I like it and I know it. It's not so special. So those are the dynamics of brand equity that we can start to understand. And if you measure it right, this is one of our new indices we're working on, this momentum index. You can really, capture the moments, the components of brand that drive financial performance. In this case, we're outperforming the NASDAQ and the S&P and the Dow significantly because we're measuring the things that motivate consumer behaviors. So let's talk about those things that motivate. And we measure brands on a battery of image dimensions, personality dimensions, that you can start to say, okay, which brands are creating the most passion? The ones that are kind, or the ones that are trendy, or the ones that are, so we can do a lot of dissecting and understand how the dynamics work. What are the motivations of consumers, the point of this presentation. So one of the things we've done is globally, let's look at across all brands that we measure, what are the fundamental dimensions that motivate? And these are our global factors that we came up with based on the math around how brands are rated. So there's established brands, distinguished brands, purposeful brands. That was not something that was so important 10 years ago. Purposeful, as we know, has become more important. We'll talk about that. So there's lots of different ways, hip, inventive, that brands can lean into territories that consumers are motivated by. And we want to dissect some of those things. So one of the things I wanted to look at, since we're talking retail, is luxury. And we talk about the shifting dynamics of things and how, the rise of purpose, or how has luxury changed? Because I think it's very different, and we're all in a different state. And we want
I've lost.
Again, still on brand today, Rolls-Royce. What's happened to these brands, right? So these are, in the U.S., classic luxury brands that have become very fatigued, right? So they're losing some of their momentum. And you see this as a global phenomenon, right? So not just in the U.S., but in these other markets, you're seeing a softening of equity and a fatiguing of equity, even in China. So I wanted to look a little deeper into China. And I apologize, I don't know the brands as well in China, but I know the dynamics of what I see in the data. And it's quite interesting. While most luxury is eroding around the world, luxury in China is actually slipping in differentiation like every other market, but it's becoming a little bit more relevant. And I was talking to some of my colleagues about this, and there seems to be, thank you, Hari, a bit of a massification of luxury in China that's picking up. So it is becoming more accessible. And not surprisingly, luxury brands are slipping in differentiation, but gaining in this relevance. You can see it here. They're more relevant, they're much more esteemed, and they're more known. So they're infiltrating the market in China today. But they probably stand for different things. So this was luxury in China in 1997. So again, a way of getting insights into who the consumer is, right? Luxury was about upper class, trust, and quality. It was pretty simple, right? It was premiumness, right? It's evolved a little bit, but right, back then it was Rolex, Rolls-Royce, Ferrari, Lacoste, Chanel types of things. It's a little bit more dynamic today. It's a little bit less upper class. It's still prestigious. It's less about trust. It's more about being in vogue and stylish and trendy, at least in China. So you're seeing, and a little bit cooler. It's kind of interesting. So you're seeing a shifting dynamic in those most prestige and luxurious brands out there in China today, get reflective of that the more mass dynamic. So again, insights into how people think about luxury. You still see many compelling brands. These are the 90s, but if you go to today, we continue to see multiple paths to how brands are becoming luxury brands in the hearts of consumers. So Rolex is really doing a wonderful job of owning luxury, but it's very performance centric, right? So luxury comes in different ways. Chanel still owns and retains that prestige and that glamour, and so they go for status as their path to luxury. Apple is seen as a luxury brand. It's a premium brand. It's an expensive brand because of its innovation, because of its vision. And we're seeing a lot of luxury brands that are about escape, luxuration, I call it, that are more dynamic and energetic. So lots of ways you can start to measure and what's the right path to luxury for your brand. Again, looking at how these things drive success and momentum. Okay. How we shop. This is relevant to retail, obviously. This is not surprising, but just some good sound bites for everybody to hear. Obviously, we know the rise of e-commerce in China. It's amazing and such a big market, such a big opportunity. To understand consumers and their realities around e-commerce is really important, obviously. In 2019, 61% of the market in China, total pop, said, I prefer online because it's more convenient. And 45% agreed, I prefer an in-store shopping experience. So it was a more experiential thing that was important back then. It's still important. It's just changed, obviously. But look what's happened. Today, just 2 years later, 79% of the Chinese market prefers to shop online now. Again, COVID, big implication. But again, that it's an amazing shift that's here to stay. And that decline in I prefer to shop in store because the convenience and everything else is usurping the need to go in store. So you have to rethink what that experience is, and that's really important. And we talk about consumer experience all the time. You see it in our data and the need for that. Interesting. Actually, Chinese seem to skew much more online, but not much more. Everybody is compared to other markets around the world. It's definitely a heavy online marketplace, less of an in-store kind of. In the U.S., you still have 71% of Americans say they prefer an in-store shopping experience, but they also say they prefer to shop online. So a little bit of a evolution of shopping style that's happening, and you're starting to see that data here. And the Chinese market seems to be leading the way. Again, another interesting insight. And you can see as a result, what's the implications to retail brands. Not surprising, e-commerce brands are continue to move up to that leadership and momentum space, while typical bricks and mortar brands still leadership. So lots of power in bricks and mortar, but starting to soften a little bit. Not surprising, but things to think about. How do you stay up there? Interesting foreign retails. Amazon's probably the strongest brand in the U.S. as we measure, in about 3,000 or 4,000 brands. It's tough to break into the Chinese market, and you see some of these local Chinese retail brands are much stronger. Interesting opportunity. I just want to look at Alibaba versus Amazon because to me they're different and similar, but to understand some of those dynamics and how they work. And I thought this was kind of interesting. Alibaba leads with its product brands, it seems, and Amazon leads with its parent brand. I just thought that was a cool insight to think about and that's a strategic decision, and you have to think about how you leverage it. But again, very different portfolio structure. Something to think about how consumers respond. Either way, both brands are benefiting from substantially greater equity, leadership, innovation, pricing power than their peers in the marketplace. Very strong. Look at Amazon's regular usage in the U.S. is 5 times greater than peers. Just the power of intellect and for Alibaba is amazing, right? The importance of trust. We talk about trust all the time. Why does trust matter? I'm going to make sure I'm not out of time. Nope, great. Trust in brands has been declining over the past 20 years, right? We see it. There's much more transparency. The internet makes us see everything and hear everything, truth and not truth. Regardless of that, the percentage of brands that are highly trusted in China has declined. Similarly, globally, right? It's no difference. And, doesn't mean it's not important. In China, this is the benefit of being trusted in retail specifically. So trusted retailers are definitely more used, more preferred, more recommended. That advocacy and pricing power are so important. Again, but also stronger equity, more differentiated, particularly more esteem. So you can see that trust is more of an esteem driver, but still very powerful. So you have to think about the fact trust is in decline. As a marketer, how do I own trust in a way that's compelling and creates a deeper engagement in a relationship with my customer? You look at some of the most trusted retailers globally, and there is a mix, and the Alibaba makes it to the lot, right there with Amazon. The most trusted brands in China, it's interesting. One American brand, not so, as we said, less so. It's hard to break in China, but the ones that are breaking in. Oh, one quick comment. I thought this was interesting. The most trusted brands in China today, still many of them are bricks and mortar, right? So while everything is going online, there is power in bricks and mortar if you can leverage it in the right way, and these brands are able to keep that engagement going. And I'll talk about a couple that I know about a little bit later. Purpose, another compelling insight. We all talk. I can't tell you how many clients over the past 5 years have said we want to understand our purposeful positioning. And why are they asking that? I mean, there's pressure from ESG and from financial communities around more transparent business. Consumers care about it more, in truth. And we see the rise here, and some of this data shows a 20% impact since 2007 on the importance of purpose, on differentiation. So that's a customer insight based on derived importance of purpose. Esteem, it's a high driver of esteem. It's more important among younger people than older people. And again, there's power in purpose, and we have to understand that as branders. It's really important in China. Again, these are stated results, but drivers of brand choice, 76% say in China say that I make an extra effort to support local. So local is important. I go out of my way to support the planet, 89%. 79%, they say they buy positive impact brands and brands that reflect my values. So again, purpose is important in China. It's important around the world. It's how you do it that matters, but that's a different story. You can see the power of purpose today. It's interesting. In the U.S., it skews much younger, the importance of purpose. It's a little bit more balanced in China. It's important among young and old, at least in our data, it's suggesting that based on stated importance of purpose. Regardless of how you measure it, the top most purposeful brands today, again, are powerful brands. And you can lean into it, and every brand it's the right thing to do, but every brand can lean into it and actually make it a impactful thing to do for their bottom lines as well. Because when you create purpose, that drives brand equity, that drives advocacy, that drives dollar value. Some brands that are capitalizing on purpose and doing a good job of it are Coke and Starbucks, and both of them are trying to break in and do this in China. So Coca-Cola is unveiling recycled bottle bags and focus on environmental awareness in China. And Starbucks is a very green brand and greener store initiatives and things in China. Again, great examples of global brands trying to make a global impact in China. Alibaba, local, doing a lot as well. Sustainability, very focused. Collaborations and recycling, all these things. You see the power brands talking about this, how it affects their bottom lines as it's driving consumer attitudes about the brand, which in turn trickle down to behavior. Okay. Quickly, because I have about 10 more minutes, let's talk about love for a minute. And there's a fuller presentation going on, so I will not go too deep into it, but every brand wants to be loved. Every person wants to be loved, I'm assuming. I wanted to talk about the love of retail in this case. There's a clear relationship between love and advocacy, right? If I love a brand, I'm going to use it more, I'm going to prefer it more, I'm going to recommend it. That's great. So how do I create love, right? What does love really mean? Love can bridge generations, which is interesting. In this case, Band-Aid in the U.S., Lebanon in China. Again, across these audiences are love brands, right? So there's commonalities in the brands we love, not always, but often. There's an insight there when you look at the brands that are loved by a market. There's findings there too, or by an audience. Some of the most loved brands around the world, WeChat, a big fave in China. You could see that. Kleenex in the US. So you could see Kleenex a bit commoditized, right? Not all these brands are so compelling because love, is that enough? Or maybe it depends on the kind of love. The most loved brands tend to be a little bit more mass and a little bit more fatigued, more strength, more stature than strength. Not necessarily growing, but that doesn't mean love not important. So trying to dig under the hood a little bit and say, okay, are there ways to be loved that are more compelling than others? And we found that there were. We did a wonderful piece, David Roth and I and a few of the team, thank you guys, around the most loved brands and the most loved retailers. Again, you'll get more into this, but there are multiple ways that brands are loved. Brands that you lean on and depend on. I love you for that. Brands that I can't get you out of my head, that I'm so excited about you. Brands that I just need in my life. or brands that make me happy, right? Those are the kinds of love we found when we looked at data. So that you're getting into insights into motivations around, what do I love about brands? And we kind of did those types of things. And here's just some examples, and I won't talk to it too much because I don't know, again, the market as well, of the most loved brands for these different reasons. And some of them are loved for across a few of them. So I'm going to pick out a couple of them, like, for instance, KFC. It's a lean on me brand in China. It's an American brand. I thought that was interesting. It's also, I can't get you out of my head, and it makes me happy. So brands that, Linding is another one that does such a great job, up there with Nike, which is interesting. So you start to see lots of brands that are loved in China today. I thought KFC was interesting, American brand that really broke into the marketplace many years ago, but it's a big staple there. It's become a Chinese brand in a sense, and it adapted to local menus, and it did a great job of being agile and really getting to the hearts of customers. Again, it was been there for a long time. It's about quality. It's look at regular usage is twice as strong as its peers. It's more preferred. It's more recommended. It's great pricing power. Again, great example of love. Li-Ning, I'm sorry, I never say that right. Great example of a powerful brand. I've done work on it before, and it's a beautiful work, by the way. It's doing really well. It's really loved. And there's definitely rising Chinese nationalism, particularly around fashion, which is really fascinating. Sportswear and luxury, they're leading into that kind of duality, which is always compelling. Celebrity ambassadors also help. So again, the combination of things starts to help drive a really compelling brand. Again, great product, great brand collectively, preferred, recommended, highly used. So again, power of love. I will end it with that. I wish I had more time, but the more you know about how customers see a brand, the good, the bad, the ugly. The ugly is really important, by the way. The more you can identify its ideals, the more you can understand the motivations. So again, not just asking people, do you think purpose is important, but looking at the brands they use and say, okay, these are really purposeful brands and these are not, and they're using the purposeful ones, that tells me they're motivated by purpose, right? So some of the ways we use data, BAV is an amazing, compelling database that you can do a lot with. So hopefully you saw some interesting ways that we can think about.
So Michael, how can people get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about BAV?
Sure. Just email me right here, michael.sussman@bavgroup.com. And I have a team that's out there that will help you in your regions, and or just wants a training session or wants to just talk and geek out about brands. Just email me and my team. We're very responsive. It's our job to make BAV an amazing asset for all of WPP. So.
Fantastic. And any clients also who want to get access to that, they can speak directly to Michael or with their WPP agencies, and we'll make sure that that's available to you as well.
Absolutely.
Michael Sussman, Chief Product Officer of BAV. It's always a pleasure and a delight. I always learn something new as well. So thank you very much indeed for joining us and for the session that you did on our first day, last Monday. Seems a long time ago.
It's been a long time. Thanks, everyone.
Michael, thank you very much indeed. And we'll be back with Ian McGarrigle, the Chairman of the World Retail Congress, to talk all things retail globally in 5 minutes. Look forward to seeing you then. Bye.
Cheers.